Hello, everyone. This is Zayami Eccles-Irwin from FilmFestivalCircuit.com and the Assistant Director of the Oregon Short Film Festival. We're gearing up for our Summer 2023 session, which is going to screen on July 16th at the beautiful historic Clinton Street Theater. And today we're talking to one of our participating filmmakers. Sarah Shively is the producer of Darcelle on Life, Love, and Dying. Sarah, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right in. This is a particularly important film in the Portland context. We're super happy to be screening it, and it's not your standard documentary. It delves into not only the legacy of Darcelle, this titan of Portland culture, but also asks questions, existential questions about the nature of performance and how that relates to the family life. So I just want to know what inspired you to work on this important piece.
This isn't all, particularly a sexy answer, but it was part of an assignment that we had at the University of Oregon's School of Journalism and Communication. This was part of the Multimedia Journalism Master's Program. And our cohort was working on covering issues around Old Town in Portland. We had a team that was out working with the homeless. We had another team that was working with some other businesses. And I was particularly interested in spending time with Darcelle and Darcelle 15, the showplace. And initially there was a little bit of pushback because, so many people have covered Darcelle in so many ways. And do we really need to do anything more on Darcelle? Well, the thing was that at the time, this was spring of 2021, this coincided with the showplace being designated on the National Register of Historic Places, which was particularly unique because the shop owner was still living, still performing, still working. And that's not the way that usually goes. So that was sort of the initial kickoff of why I went after this piece. And it took some time to leverage some relationships and so on to be able to find our way into, an actual interview with Darcelle. And we started interviewing some people that, in particular, Don Horn, who is a biographer of Darcelle's and was the main thrust behind finally getting the showplace designated on the National Register. So we interviewed a number of people and obviously found the interviews with Darcelle and the other performers at the showplace to be the most rewarding. Although my personal favorite was our interview with Bambi Oli, who was his personal caregiver at that time. And we started to see that there were some really interesting topics and subjects boiling up in these conversations. And in a lot of ways, the questions around, who is Darcelle and how were people going to feel when Darcelle died were somewhat secondary to the larger conversation. But they were perhaps the most heartfelt questions. And at the time of the interview, I think Darcelle was 91 years old.
Oh, wow.
And Walter had been recovering from an illness anyway, so there had already been a scare around his well-being and his health. And we were in the pandemic, and it was a difficult time for the business and so on. And the bottom line was we were facing a deadline for our course work. And Christena was able to knock this out really fairly quickly, and she did a beautiful job with it. And I knew at the time that while it wasn't covering all of the things that we had discussed in the interviews, in and of itself, it was a beautiful eulogy piece, and that it would have its day. And of course, it is now having its day. So it's meant a lot to people recently. We were able to connect with the Oregonian. They were able to share it. There's been some follow-up from it, and I'm really glad that the piece is out there and people are going to have a chance to see it at the Shorts Festival and so on, because it is a touching piece, and for a lot of people right now, it's a bit of a tearjerker.
Absolutely. Well, it's very interesting to hear how you came upon this project. I'm kind of curious, what is it like enmeshing yourself with, a strong community that's already been documented in certain ways, but you're coming in it to a fresh perspective. What's it like getting to know people and working your way to the sort of inner circle, so to speak?
It's a nice question, and it's something that I particularly enjoy doing as a producer, being able to make those connections with people and nurture those relationships. And I think it's important to give it the time that it needs. We didn't rush in. The Darcelle interview was not the first interview we did. A lot of care was taken to get to know people. I was able to leverage some relationships. I knew Poison Waters a little bit. I had worked with her on a few benefit auction events.
Okay. Totally.
And, sort of one thing led to another, but we took our time. And I made sure that as much as we could, we honored every step of the way. If we showed up at the showplace, that we patroned the business, that we were tried to be out of people's way as much as possible.
Totally.
And I think things were able to open up from there. In fact, I ended up having another interview with Darcelle for an altogether different project. But that would have only been possible because we had already laid the groundwork with those relationships. Right. And the nice thing, after Darcelle passed away, the next night, the business was open again. And so I went down on my first freelance gig with the Oregonian, and there were all of these different news outlets there, but I was the only person who knew to interview Bambi.
Yeah.
So, I took her outside and got this phenomenal interview with her. It was really raw and just really lovely because I knew she had been present when Darcelle died.
Right.
And she was one of only 3 people that were. And she shared that story. And, we talked to the other guests that were coming to see the show that night. And it was such an incredible evening. I mean, it was just the energy in the room that evening was amazing.
So that's incredible. It's very interesting to hear that sort of social aspect to creating a documentary like this. There is the finesse of human relationships to really make it happen. I'm kind of curious also, what was your crew like? Was it a big crew, small crew, and what was it like working with people?
It was Christena and me.
Okay, wow.
That was it. And she's a very gifted director of photography and camera person. So she was largely setting up the 2 camera shoots, and I would help with the lighting, and he had a whole list of questions. So I was conducting the interview, and she was making sure that everything looked fabulous. It was it was really a student production.
Okay.
And we had several advantages. One being that Christena has quite a bit of experience already as a camera person. But in addition to that, we were using some borrowed lenses that were really nice and enhanced what we were doing. And we were shooting 4K. And so, we did what we could to give it as much of a professional look as possible.
Yeah, it definitely has that polished feel. Well, so now I'm curious. This was, I think, would you say this is a final project for your master's in journalism?
Actually, this one wasn't the final for either one of us. This was
wow.
Simply a piece that came out of an engaged community engaged journalism seminar or semester that we were going through.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm wondering then, is there something that you learned from this process? Is there any new takeaways or new insights on the craft that you have from this?
Oh, well, for sure. I think this was a pretty big project for us. And there were a lot of preliminary interviews, and there was a lot that went into making this happen. And we spent a whole quarter just laying all the groundwork.
Okay.
And then a whole nother quarter getting all of these interviews and everything that we, aside from Darcelle, Everyone else, there was a preliminary interview on Zoom. Well, actually, that's not true, because that wasn't true with Mr. Mitchell either. But for the most part, we talked with people in advance of putting them in front of the camera.
Okay.
And so there was a lot that went into this initially. We just didn't rush in. And I think that was an important thing to learn and work on and think about, was that, yeah, you can show up at someone's door and try and get what you're going to get. But if you take a little time and you meet with people preliminarily and you have conversations and you make connections, you're going to get a more authentic interview.
Okay, cool. That's interesting to know, because I feel like one of the thoughts about documentaries that you're just rushing in, filming everything. You never know what you're going to get, so you're just trying to grab it all. But you're saying that actually there's value in taking time, talking to people unrecorded, I assume, just to figure out what the topic of conversation is going to look like for the interview. That's very interesting.
Yes.
It's a valuable insight. Well, now I'm curious, what other projects are you working on? Do you have any more documentaries, any more assignments that are in the works right now?
Yes. So I finished the program last year. And this year, I received a grant. I'm working on a piece. I'm calling it the video project of Measure 110. And I just wrapped production. I'm now editing and writing and sifting through all the material. I'm hoping this is going to be a really. I felt the interviews were really impactful, so I'm hoping the piece will have impact. I'm zeroing in on peer support services and peer mentors. And I've had some really incredible interviews and follow-along days with people who are working for organizations that service various communities that are dealing with drug rehabilitation and drug treatment. And peer mentors are people who they themselves may still be in recovery, but they were drug addicts. Most of them were at one point incarcerated. And now they are helping people who are facing similar difficulties as they go through their recovery. And with Measure 110, we have been able to hire more peer mentors because we have found them to be incredibly powerful. And we're finally able to pay the ones that are working this really, really difficult job living wages. And I really wanted to highlight that, because I think a lot of people don't quite understand how important this role is. This is the person who can look at you and hopefully looks like you and can say, I believe in you, I've been there, and I'm here to help. And that's a lot more powerful than just medications or doctors or psychiatrists. These people are there every day in the trenches with what some of these folks are going through, because it's not easy.
Well, that sounds like an incredible project. Very interesting. I can't wait to see that, and I think you have great momentum in your output here.
Yeah. I feel like we're on a good roll.
Totally. Is there anything else you'd like to add on Darcelle, on life, love, and dying?
Well, one thing that's just been really touching is to see the degree to which not just the Portland community, but the world has responded since Darcelle has passed away. The banners, the benefits, the celebration of life service. It's been really, really impressive. And you realize that Darcelle was a father and a mother to a lot of people and had an incredible impact on this community. And I feel really pleased and proud that, Christena and I could be part of that story at this time.
Totally. Well, beautiful work. Thank you so much for doing this. I cannot wait to put this on at the Oregon Short Film Festival on July 16th. I know it's going to be a very celebratory atmosphere in the auditorium for this screening. So, Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I look forward to meeting you at the festival.
Okay, take care.
Bye.